The LinkedIn Podcast Network is sponsored by SAP. Harness the power of AI across your business and achieve results that are relevant, reliable, and responsible with SAP Business AI. Revolutionary technology, real-world results. That's SAP Business AI.
I'm Tomer Cohen, LinkedIn's Chief Product Officer. In my new podcast, Building One, I interview some of the best product builders out there. People at the intersection of dreaming and building and learning. Together, you and I will learn from their experiences. If you're just as curious as I am, follow Building One wherever you listen, and check out the conversation on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn presents.
The value judgment is a surefire way to kill every chance of rapprochement or even compromise. So unless you want enmity and trouble, keep it factual and criticize what people do, not their character, their identity, or their affiliations.
Happy Wednesday, friends. I'm Michael Kovnat, and this is the Next Big Idea Daily, quick masterclasses from the best new books written and read to you by the authors themselves. Don't forget to hit follow and sign up for our newsletter using the link in the episode notes. So here we are. Election Day is behind us. All the votes have been cast, even if not all of them have been counted. So while we wait for the dust to settle, let's talk about what becomes of our politics now. Well, until the next time we can express our opinions in the voting booth, we're back to our old tool, conversation. And in the age of disinformation and deep fakes, it's more important than ever that we learn how to use our words skillfully. So let's check out some ideas from the book, The Art of Verbal Warfare by Rick Smits. No, not the former center for the Indiana Pacers, though that would be cool. No, this Rick Smits is a Dutch linguist, and he's here to help us figure out how we can use language to inspire and influence with some big ideas from his book.
Beware of value judgments. They're toxic. In 1967, the American psychiatrist Thomas A. Harris published a guide for modern life called I Am Okay, You Are Okay. It was a book about becoming truly free, about tolerance and getting along peacefully, very much in sync with the liberating revolutions of the 60s and 70s in Western cultures. It became a worldwide bestseller. Of course, much of the famous love and peace of the 60s was little more than self-serving hedonistic pretense. And yet, there was a widely shared optimistic mood at its core, a positive attitude that really helped improve things. In today's social climate, a similarly hip bestseller would probably be called something like, I Am Okay, You Are a Jerk. For these are much less tolerant, incredibly more bitterly polarized times. Value judgments are toxic in two ways. First, they are not factual assessments, but opinions, and you cannot defend yourself against another person's opinion. It's useless to deny being a jerk. So from the point of view of the jerk, so to speak, any discussion is futile. Second, value judgments are about characteristics you can't do anything about. You cannot atone for being contemptible or dangerous, even if you'd want to. I am okay, you are a jerk. The value judgment is a surefire way to kill every chance of rapprochement or even compromise. So unless you want enmity and trouble, keep it factual and criticize what people do, not their character, their identity, or their affiliations. We may never come to terms with Twitter and other social media. Nobody knows exactly how history will rate Twitter in, say, 50 years' time, but one thing is clear. While most users of Twitter behave themselves civilly, we cannot deny that rows spring up there more often and get out of hand far more easily than in real life. This is mostly due to characteristics of the medium itself. First, there is the illusion of intimacy. Social media are designed to give users the impression that they are among friends, that they are having a semi-private conversation like those you have at the pub, where people at the next table may overhear you, but usually won't listen to what you say and only rarely react. On social media, however, countless strangers do listen in and do interfere, often creating misunderstandings and worse. And there's no publican to warn off the occasional bully or Bible thumper. Twitter's moderation systems are and always will be too slow for that, too heavy-handed and too cumbersome to have the same corrective effect. Instead, they tend to cause even more aggravation. Second, human communication is generally of one of two kinds: conversation or writing. Conversation is fast, relatively informal, fleeting and interactive, meaning that listeners can interrupt at any time for clarification or to show their appreciation. Written communication, on the other hand, is slow, relatively formal, permanent and strictly one way. Social media clash with this natural order of things. They are fast and informal and interactive, yet permanent. As a result, sloppy formulated banter, quick repartee and hastily typed unfortunate replies may come back to haunt you for years. I'm not sure people will ever fully learn how to deal with that, but a system of automatic degradation of posts so that they disappear in a few days' time might certainly help. Cultural relativism is a dangerous fallacy. A big bone of contention in current public verbal warfare is the issue of cultural relativism, often understood as the idea that all cultures are equal. By its promoters, it is touted as the apogee of respectful modern tolerance, but in reality it is neither respectful nor modern nor tolerant. Cultural relativism is based on the premise that there exist no universal moral values, that is, values that are shared by all cultures on Earth. This sounds innocuous enough, but it has devastating consequences. For if there's nothing at all that cultures share, there's no objective yardstick to measure and compare them by. Hence, a culture can only be appreciated and judged by its own members and on its own terms. Outsiders simply have nothing to say that is worth listening to. This renders all cross-cultural criticism void. Misogyny, exploitation of children, forced labor camps, slavery, or even human sacrifice? Who are you to hold that against a culture? But if there is no sense in looking critically at other cultures, there is also no point in trying to learn from them, or even in getting to know each other. As a consequence, there can be no trust. All that's left is for us to withdraw into our own cultural foxhole, dreading the neighbors and waiting to put one over on them. What would ensue is the eternal war of all against all, the spectre of Thomas Hobbes. Thankfully, that is not what the world looks like at all, even if certain tribal cultures come close. In reality, there is intercultural interest and cooperation, and people from different cultures do learn from each other. So obviously, cultural relativism is a hoax. In fact, the whole idea is groundless, because there does exist at least one universal moral value. Nobody wishes an unhappy life full of sickness, disaster, and injustice upon himself or his nearest and dearest. In this respect, cultures only differ with respect to who counts as nearest and dearest. Don't disparage irrationality, it's your friend. Happiness, the writer and philosopher Ayn Rand once wrote, is possible only to a rational man, the man who desires nothing but rational goals, seeks nothing but rational values, and finds his joy in nothing but rational actions. Well, if that were true, I'd happily forgo happiness any time, for by the prophet's beard doesn't it sound incredibly mirthless and dull. Rand may be a relatively radical thinker, but she's not an exception. In our modern world, there are many who exalt the virtues of rationality and disparage all that is irrational as backward, uncivilized, even bestial. They stand in a long line of philosophers, going back at least to Pythagoras, who tried to make sense of the world by ordering it into a collection of black and white oppositions: good versus bad, right versus wrong, light versus dark, male versus female, and life versus death, and rationality versus the irrational, which is therefore necessarily also bad, wrong, dark, female, etc. In Pythagoras' day, this was a good way of trying to understand an often mysterious and bewildering world. but by now one would have hoped philosophy had moved on. For rationality and irrationality aren't opposites at all. Rather, they are complements, inextricably intertwined aspects of human life. Take Rand's The Rational Man, or rather, take a boy building a model of the Titanic from Lego. Doing so requires a lot of rational planning and reasoning, but the joy involved in thinking it out and getting it done is entirely irrational. Joy is an emotion, as is, by the way, the elusive and undefinable property called happiness itself. And without that joy, what's the point of building a model in the first place? In such cases and many others, our rational mind is merely an instrument to achieve an irrational end, and to a considerable degree itself a source of irrational fun.
Thank you, Rick. All right, that's our show for the day, everyone. If you got something out of it, please leave a rating or review in your podcast player so others can find the show too. And come on back tomorrow when we'll continue our post-election conversation with some big ideas from the new book, Good, Reasonable People, The Psychology Behind America's Dangerous Divide by Keith Payne. I'm Michael Kovnat. See you tomorrow.